welcome to the Dice Matrix. My name is ET, and today I'm going to tell you the top 10 / best two-player games of all times. Okay, on my list there is a little bit of caveat though. The thing with my list is that some of the games are not exactly two players, but they, in my opinion, are best played with two players, or at least I've have the best experience, or I want to play them probably with two players as my favorite player count. But most of the games on the list are true, tested two-player games. But if you disagree with me, please put down in the comments below what you think are some games that either I missed or that you think that are better, and tell me why that you like those games so much. So that would be awesome. Starting off at number 10 is Tides of Time or Tides of Madness. Now, this is kind of a Euro-y card drafting game. The game takes place with this beautiful artwork of only 14 cards, and they're divided up between the two players in stages. So you're going to grab a few each time and then you're going to make a selection, go back and forth, and eventually you're going to save them. But they're going to have different codes and stuff on them. So you're kind of building your tableau of your world or city or whatever. But by what you're drafting in this game, has the different symbols and they score different ways. So you know what you're giving up to your opponent, but yet it may come back to you. And as you play, the cards play out what cards they've kept. You see, they see what you played, you see what they've played, so you kind of know what they're working on. So you're trying to generate as many points as you can, as well as keep your opponent from getting points. And that decision-making process and drafting is one of my favorite mechanic. Well, it is my favorite mechanic of all time. So it's easy to make this list. If you like the Cthulhu version with a little bit of flavor, they add in the madness to the game, which adds a really nice aspect to it. I suggest that one. But anyway, number 10 is Tides of Madness / Tides of Time, whichever you want to go with. Coming in at number 9 is Star Realms, which is by White Wizard Games. It has a deck building. It came from the series of deck building where both players, just strictly a two-player game where you start with so many cards in your hand, a couple of fighters, and a couple of money cards, and you keep trying to buy more cards and build your deck up and shuffle and reshuffle, and you're just trying to blast the other person to the face. It's quick, fast, fun. They spun off to Hero Realms and a bunch of different things, but Star Realms, it's a deck builder. It's sci-fi, lightly themed. You probably could have used anything, but it works, and it's a great gateway game too, by the way. Like Tides of Madness may not be the first thing to get someone into, but Star Realms is very easy. I mean, technically, I guess if you bought 2 master decks, you could play more players, but it's really a dueling game. You don't want to play Star Realms more than that. Okay, let me think. Number 8. Now this game you can actually play solo, but I think you can play it with 4 players. It's Mage Knight. Now I'm a huge fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and the fantasy world just has always appealed to me ever since one of my earliest influences. Like a lot of game designers out there that I found out. And Mage Knight is kind of a little bit of a thinky game. It's got a higher weight to it, difficulty rating, and you're exploring this beautiful modular landscape, and you're trying to siege castles and take down these cities and fight all the monsters, orcs and whatnot. And it's a great game, but since there's so much going on and you have to play in your hand, I think that I like the two-player. You can't play single, but I like the two-player experience because you can kind of, if you want to, you can interact physically, with your opponent. But usually when I play with people, I don't do that so much because I just like to explore. But I like to talk about the experience because I look over and I go, oh, how well did they do trying to get their stuff? And there is a point system, and you can win. There's also a cooperative play in it. But Mage Knight, an excellent game, and I love playing it best 2 players. Now, which brings me to number 7, which is probably one of the hottest games out there for the last year, which is Gloomhaven. Now, you can solo this, and you can play it more as well, more players as well. But Gloomhaven is set in a unique fantasy world, and everybody's dealt the same amount of cards, and you have to learn how to use each character's cards of what you play. So you have this hand management, and your cards are like a timer, because when you play the better cards, eventually when you rest or whatever, you're losing cards permanently out of your hand until the scenario is over. And if you run out of cards, then your character's finished. So I have played it with 3 players, but 2 players is my favorite because what ranks this into the upper part of games between all the 2-player games I could have listed is that the story the way the decisions you get to make within it. So you can play a single shot, whatever, which is fine. But if you add in the story mode where you get to make the decisions and things are crossed off, like, well, you decided to backstab that person, so that story arc's out of the way, so you can't go back there anymore. It's very thematic and just beautifully designed. So I highly recommend Gloomhaven if you have the patience for a little weightier game. It takes some while to learn how to play. You might fail a few times first before you understand, but you can play it on like a 0 difficulty level. So if you need some help with that, you can. And plus, you can house rule some stuff if you're really suffering. So anyway, number 7 was Gloomhaven. Coming in at number 6 is, this is a good one, Star Wars Rebellion. Now, I'm a big sci-fi Star Wars fan. My car's got Star Wars stickers all over it, and ever since a kid, I used to own all the little plastic action figures. A lot of great Star Wars games out there. Rebellion is definitely meant as a 2-player game. I think they might have a commander mode like some of these things where you can have 4 players. It's ridiculous. Don't play it 2-player. That's the only way to play it. Everybody will agree that is just the way to go. Now, Rebellion, one person plays as the Empire, one person plays as the I'm trying to blank here, the dark side, the Empire, and the other's the Rebellion. And so what happens is you have this your board is just 2 star maps with all these planets on it, and the Empire just has all this power, and they keep pushing out all these ships, and they're trying to find where you are, and you're just trying to keep your base hidden and score little hits here and there, and basically you're trying just to escape. You're not trying, there's not like you're gonna make some big, you could blow up the Death Star, but you can do anything thematically within the story of Star Wars pretty much. It's called Star Wars in a box. Most people will describe it that way, but the game is very intense. Now, normally, I don't play this game a lot because it is so intense, especially when I'm the Rebellion. Even though I think I've won most of the times when I've played, I just feel like so much pressure. Like when you see the expansiveness of the Empire, how they're coming after you, you're like, oh my gosh, can I handle this? I don't know. I really get stressed. But I cannot deny the reason why it is up on the list is even though I don't play it as much just because of the high factor intensive volume of it, but the game is just so well designed. It is one of the most thematically tied games to an IP out there, and I just can't imagine not putting it on this list, and especially as high as I did. So number 6, Star Wars Rebellion. Coming in at number 5 is an old game designed, I believe, by Richard Borg, used the commands and color system. It's Memoir 44. I love this little game. I don't get to play it as much as I'd like to because usually our group has more than 2 people when we play. I keep meaning to break it out, but there's always easier when I get someone into gaming, there's always easier 2-player games to get them into. Like, oh, you've never played games before? Here's Star Realms or something. And then as time goes on, but by that time, they've progressed and they're like, I want to play this big, scythe. I want to play with 7 players, or, and that's how a lot of people roll. I generally prefer 3 players, probably max in a gaming group. I mean, I don't mind 5 or so. I'll play whatever, but like my preferential is probably 3 to 4 is my sweet spot that I enjoy because it gives me enough interaction with the other players. But anyway, I digress. Back to Memoir 44. This game follows the history of the war, and it gives you the scenarios based upon actual facts of the game. And there's different rules on setup, and they will link the events in history on the map to where you set your units up. And usually you just race to a number of points. You basically get little plastic army men and tanks, and you have a movement rule. You play a card out of your hand, so you have to manage card management to activate one of the 3 zones, and then you activate those troops, and they have rules for movement and firing and terrain. And it's actually not hard at all. Everything comes with little cards, and you can just lay them out and go, oh, what do I need to move into a forest? What does this do? Do I have to stop? What do I do on a hill? I mean, it's easy because you just need to know the basics, and then you can just look at these little cards real quick as reference. And super clean design, super fun, and more challenging than you might think. Just a fun game. Memoir 44. Okay, number 4, Clash of the Lightsabers. Star Wars Clash of the Lightsabers. Excuse me, yeah. Star Wars Clash of the Lightsabers. This game was, built when Episode 1 came out, and this is one of my favorite 2-player games. And even though as old as it is, I can't get rid of it because it's just so fun. It's a real simple game where you have a track of Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul, and it kind of simulates like their last little battle fighting each other, sort of, because in this story, Qui-Gon Jinn could win. And you're playing cards. Some of them are just numbers out of your hand representing a power, but the other ones actually have abilities. So as you're playing on one side, you have to decide, basically as the first one to win 2 out of 3 of the conflict to move up the track. and the first one to get to the end of the track 5. So there's 4 more tracks to go. The first one to reach their figure at the end will win the game. And you have to know kind of when to say, hey, I'm going to concede this battle. And the whole game is built around knowing when to push your luck and when to concede. And if you play your cards right, and you make the right decisions, there's a lot more. This game is so easy to play, but there's a lot more skill and thinking involved than you might first imagine by playing it, because everybody has the exact same symmetrical decks. They're just worded differently for their special powers. But great game. Star Wars Clash of the Lightsabers coming in number 4. Number 3, best game of all time for 2 players is Dice Masters. Now, I will give a silent shout out to the game that got me into all these types of games years ago, which is Magic the Gathering by Richard Garfield. It always gets an honorary mention, as does Dungeons and Dragons. But that's why I like Dice Masters so much, because Dice Masters gives me the feel of Magic the Gathering in the dueling, but doesn't convolute it with millions of cards. You basically only choose up to like 8 heroes and 2 special abilities, and then you grab these dice, and it's a dice building game where you purchase the people, and as you shake them and produce your energy to purchase more people, then you can activate their special powers once you get the dice into play, and they have different strengths. It's built around the Marvel universe, and it's actually called, I guess, Marvel Dice Masters, but my favorite set is the Dungeons and Dragons, and it would probably be low. It would still be on this list, but it'd probably be lower if it wasn't for the Dungeons and Dragons set, because it gives me that flair of the Dungeons and Dragons universe where you can play heroes versus monsters. Just a beautifully designed game, and it plays really quick, and no one's going to beat you usually on turn 2. I mean, yes, there are, if people play with dice from way back and mix these 3 sets together like Magic, if you play with that open kind of rule, yeah, then fine. But most time when you play it with someone, you can agree like, we're all going to play in the Marvel universe or this universe, or hey man, that die combo is kind of ridiculous. It's, it's the home game or whatever. But you guys can suss that out how you want. But Dice Masters, especially for a casual, super fun game, yeah, I would recommend it. Okay, number 2, best game of all time for 2 players is Shadows of Brimstone. I know you can play this solo, or you can play it up to 6 players if you have 2 massive boxes, but I enjoy it best. I love this, and to honor the game, I've been wearing my cowboy hat a lot in my videos, but I love Shadows of Brimstone. It's a dungeon crawl where the Old West meets unspeakable horror, and it's a dice chunker. You have to resolve all your stuff, so it's definitely a Mara thrashy trashy, whatever you want to call it, where you're just trying to slam, and bad rolls can kill you. But the neat thing about this game is you're never really dead. Permadeath happens very infrequently, and then even if you do die, there's a chance that they're handing out miracles in the town, so you can always play with, when you're playing with someone, it's like, hey, we have enough money, maybe we should resurrect that one character and bring him into our party. So I mean, it's not like your guys, and you level up. I mean, it's such a beautiful game. It is can tend to be on the difficult side, especially if you're a bad dice chunker, like sometimes I can be like that. But Shadows of Brimstone, just a glorious game, and I love playing 2 players. I play it solo a lot just because I want to play it, but there's nothing like experiencing it with somebody. So that is the best way to play Shadows of Brimstone. 2 players, in my opinion, of all time, number 2. All right, fake drum roll. I may not have put a special effect in there. But anyway, of all time is Seven Wonders Duel. And I actually have my copy here. I was out fiddling with it today, and that's what gave me the inspiration for it. I don't know if I have my reverse camera put on, but just a very small box. It's a drafting game where you lay out the cards of 3 different ages in this pyramid style. Some are hidden or some are revealed. And basically, you're just taking turns snagging cards. Some of them are civilian buildings. You get points at the end of the game. Some of them are sciences. And if you get 7 different sciences, you automatically win the game. Some of them are military cards. If you take those, you start pushing this pawn towards your opponent's city. And if you get it all the way to the end, then you win the game. You don't even play the rest of the game. It's very difficult to win by military. I will tell you that. I think I've only done it once. And I've won a few games through science, but most of the game, it's been through points. And usually I lose because I'm trying to win through military. But Seven Wonders Duel, beautiful, the artwork. You have these wonders that you can build. Each person has 4. They draft those at the beginning, and you draft the cards, and each age you lay them out differently, and the cards get more expensive and more powerful, and you're drafting the resources to build your things. I know I'm talking circles, but that's just what I do. But this game is just so elegant, so beautiful, so rich in gameplay that you can you only have 3 actions on your turn. You select a card. By selecting a card, you can do 3 things with it, and there's a rule that you just take the one of the ones on the available bottom row, or if some new ones get revealed and no other cards are covering, you take one of. So you take a card, and you can do 3 things with that card. You take the card, you either sell it and get a couple of coins, you put it into play on your side if you can purchase it or build it. And the third thing you can do is you can turn it upside down, don't use it for anything, but you're using it to activate your wonder, one of the wonders you selected. And if you can pay for it to build your wonder, and then it gives you some special power or points at the end of the game. Anyway, that is Seven Wonders Duel, #1 of all time, people. #1 2-player game of all time. So I hope you enjoyed my list. Tell me where I was wrong, where I screwed it up. Tell me games I should be trying to play. I will be putting out later my top 20 games of all time, and you will see some of these games in that list as well. So thank you so much for watching the Dice Matrix. Until next time, keep the dice rolling.